Almost as long as I've been Richard's wife, I've been a doctor. My name is Eleanor. Despite our ups and downs, those 30 years passed by as if they were insignificant. Particularly while the boys were little, the noises of life permeated our large, comfortable home. Even though our kids, James and Oliver, were quite different from one another, they each made us happy in their own unique ways. As doctors, Richard and I put a lot of effort into creating a comfortable existence. Over the years, we were able to purchase a few flats and rent them out to supplement our income. Up until the day Richard returned home looking paler and more solemn than I had seen him in years, everything seemed to be going well in my life. "Eleanor, we need to talk," he remarked solemnly as he left his medical bag by the door. "Last week, some testing were completed. The outcomes, they returned. It's cancer." The months that followed were a haze of unending waiting rooms, therapies, and hospital visits. Despite Richard's valiant efforts, the disease proved unforgiving. No amount of medical training can prepare you for the agony of seeing the strongest guy I know deteriorate. Richard clasped my hand as we sat in silence in the living room one evening. "Eleanor, you must ensure that the boys are taken care of if things don't work out for us. The will has been completed. You'll have no money problems." Shortly thereafter, he vanished. Family, friends, and coworkers attended the solemn funeral. People traveled from all around to show their condolences. However, what struck me most was the silence at home after everyone had departed. Richard used to leave his belongings in the same location. It was painful to recall and to watch. I was in the kitchen figuring out what to do with some leftover food a few days after the funeral when James barged in, his face contorted with wrath and anxiety. Oliver followed him, as if he would rather be somewhere else than here. As usual, James got right to the point when he remarked, "Mom, we need to talk about Dad's will." I put down the cling film with a groan. "Yes, I am aware of it. I inherited everything from your father." He was concerned about my well-being. James hit the counter with a smash. "How about Oliver and me? We are his sons. It's unfair that we receive nothing." Oliver spoke out now in an attempt to diffuse the situation. "James, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Mom is still in mourning. We can resolve this without conflict." James glared at him. "You're not considering the future, so it's easy for you to say." "Yes, I am." I felt the pressure of their looks as I leaned against the counter. "This was created by your father and me." "I hear you, James, but Dad trusted me to take care of things." "I don't intend to ignore you. So what then?" James's voice became louder as he crossed his arms. "We simply wait." "Up to what point?" "Do you believe that now is a suitable moment to give us our portion?" I said, "James, watch your tone," as my tolerance was wearing thin. "I am still your mother." Oliver put his hands up like a referee and moved between us. "Please, both of you, this isn't beneficial." "Mom, maybe there's a middle ground here." I rubbed my temples and nodded. "All right, let's do this. The downtown flats that your father and I invested in." James cut me off. "Yes, those." With a glance that warned him to zip it for a minute, I went on. "You each take one, I was thinking. You may live there or rent them out, and you can start with whatever you need with the savings. Let's say $225,000 apiece." James was obviously doing the arithmetic in his mind as he bit on his lip. "And for the time being, the house and the money remain with me. It will come to you after I'm gone." I firmly stated, "As for your father's wishes." Oliver pushed James, who appeared to want to continue the argument. "Dude, let's consider this. It's a reasonable beginning. Our mother isn't abandoning us." James gave a quiet nod at last. "All right, Mom, but I need this in writing. No more surprises." When I said, "Of course, we'll get everything documented properly," I could hear Oliver hissing at James as they walked out of the kitchen. "Will you give her a break? She is trying her hardest." I didn't really want to, and James murmured something under his breath that I couldn't understand. As I washed up the dishes, I wondered if Richard could see us and what he'd think. I hoped I was doing the right thing, but only time would tell. And time, that tricky thing, wasn't always a friend. It was a sunny afternoon, a rare kind that makes everything seem all right, when James brought Isabella over to meet me for the first time. They hadn't been dating long, but James was already head over heels. You could tell by the way he was fussing over her, which wasn't like him at all. They walked in, and right off the bat, Isabella had this air about her, like she owned the place. Dressed to the nines, she breezed into my living room with barely a hello, her eyes scanning everything. "Nice place you've got here," she said, flipping her hair back as she sat down without waiting for an invitation. James was grinning like a fool beside her. I forced a smile, trying to be the good host. "Thank you, Isabella. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Tea?" "Coffee sounds lovely," she replied, then turned to James. "Babe, make sure it's black, no sugar." James nodded and headed to the kitchen, which left me alone with her, sitting in my own living room, feeling like the guest. The silence was awkward until she broke it. "So James tells me you're pretty well off," she started, eyeing the decor. "I'm used to a certain standard, you know. My parents made sure of that." "That's good to hear," I said, not sure what else to add. James came back with a coffee and handed Isabella her cup. She took a sip and made a face. It's all right. Anyway, we've been discussing our future together, planning ahead, you know." "That's wise," I said, glancing at James, hoping he'd give me some clue about where this conversation was heading. Isabella set her cup down. "Yeah, and speaking of planning, we were thinking about you know I want something special. James has probably told you I saw this place perfect for a rehearsal dinner, but it's a bit pricey. It's about $30,000. I choked on my coffee. $30,000 just for the rehearsal dinner. James jumped in. "Mom, it's important to Bella. We want to start things off right." I put my cup down, feeling a storm brewing inside. "Look, that's a lot of money for a dinner, Isabella. We need to be reasonable." Isabella's face hardened. "Reasonable? James says you have the means. I don't see why we should compromise on something that important." James was nodding along with her, but I could see the unease in his eyes. He knew he was asking too much. "I'm all for celebrating," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "But $30,000 is beyond excessive. I can't justify that." Isabella stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I'm not used to compromising on my standards, Eleanor. I was clear with James that I expect a certain lifestyle." James tried to smooth things over. "Mom, maybe we can find a middle ground." "There's no middle ground on $30,000 for a dinner, James. That's final." I snapped, losing my patience. Isabella picked up her purse, glaring at me. "Fine. If that's how it's going to be, then maybe we need to reconsider some things." They left soon after, and I sat there reeling from the encounter. The nerve of that girl coming into my home, drinking my coffee, and telling me how to spend my money. It felt like a slap in the face, a wake-up call I wasn't ready for. I was out at the grocery store when James and Isabella decided to drop by again. By the time I got home, Oliver was awkwardly entertaining them in the living room. The atmosphere was tense, the kind that makes you want to turn around and leave. But it was my house, so I braced myself and walked in. Isabella, all dolled up as usual, handed me a list as soon as I set down my grocery bags. Eleanor, we thought a lot about the wedding gifts, and here's what we've settled on. I hope this will be easier for you to handle. I skimmed the list she first handed me. It was surprisingly sensible. Kitchen appliances, some nice china, even a couple of pieces of furniture. This seems quite reasonable, I said, feeling a momentary relief. I think these are wonderful choices, really. James looked at Isabella, a hopeful expression crossing his face. But just as I was about to discuss where we could buy these items, Isabella's expression changed abruptly. She gasped, "Oh no, this isn't right. Give that back." She snatched the list from my hands and rummaged through her purse, pulling out another sheet of paper. Here's the actual list. This new list was nothing like the first. It included an apartment, a luxury car, an exclusive vacation, and even diamond jewelry. My jaw dropped. Is this some kind of joke? Isabella didn't flinch. No joke, Eleanor. These are the gifts we expect. Only the best for our wedding. I stared at her, then at James, waiting for him to say something. Anything to suggest he didn't agree with this madness. But he just stood there, looking between us, clearly conflicted but silent. I couldn't hold back. James, why are you letting her do this? You know this is unreasonable. Isabella cut in, her voice rising. This doesn't concern you, Eleanor. You just need to pay up and keep quiet. That's when Oliver stood up, his face set hard. That's enough, Isabella. You're not going to talk to our mom like that. This is her house, and you're way out of line. You need to leave now. The room was thick with tension as James and Isabella gathered their things. Isabella was muttering under her breath, clearly angry. This is ridiculous. We'll remember this. They left, and the door slammed shut behind them. Sitting down, I felt the weight of the whole situation pressing down on me. Oliver sat beside me, putting an arm around my shoulders. We'll figure this out, Mom. But you can't let them bully you into giving more than you can or should. It's not right. He was right, of course, but as I sat there with my son, I couldn't help but worry about James. How had things gotten so out of hand? How could he not see what this was doing to our family? The silence that followed was filled with unsaid worries and fears for the future. I knew then that this was far from over. It was only going to get tougher from here. The weeks that followed were a constant barrage of phone calls from James. Each one was more demanding than the last, his tone desperate, almost frantic at times. Mom, you don't understand. I can't look poor next to Bella's family. He'd argue, his voice cracking with stress. You have the money. Why can't you just help me out here? I sat at the kitchen table, phone pressed against my ear, feeling a knot in my stomach. James, it's not about the money. It's about living within your means. Bella's expectations. You can't sustain that, not without going into serious debt. Itzkoff, his frustration boiling over. What do you know about it? I'm not going to live like a... I need more from the inheritance now. The demand is done. James, I've offered to cover half the wedding costs, up to $115,000, and give a $5,000 gift. That's more than generous. Everything has to be agreed upon with me, though. No surprises. There was a pause, then a sharp laugh from him. That's nothing. You're just being stingy. You have $1 million sitting there. Why are you holding out on me? Because it's not just about the money. I replied, my patience wearing thin. It's about not feeding into this fantasy that's going to ruin you. He yelled now, loud enough that I had to pull the phone away from my ear. I don't need this. I'll handle it my way. Forget you. And then, just like that, the call stopped. Months passed in silence. I tried to busy myself with daily routines, trying not to worry about James, but the peace was short-lived. The phone rang one afternoon, and it was my sister-in-law, Anita. "Eleanor, I thought you should know." Anita's voice was hesitant, careful. "James is flying all the wedding guests to Hawaii. He sold his apartment to fund it, and he expects you to get there on your own. He mentioned you weren't interested in helping." So I hung up, a mix of anger and sorrow turning inside me. How could he be so reckless? Before I could process it all, Oliver came into the room, his expression grim. "Mom, there's something you need to hear." I recorded their conversation when they were sitting here in the living room. He handed me an audio recorder. I pressed play, and the voices of James and Isabella filled the kitchen. "James, your mom is just a nasty old woman with a fat wallet. We need to squeeze as much as we can out of her, and then cut her off." James's voice responded, chillingly agreeable. "Whatever it takes, Bella, I'm not going to let her control us. If it comes down to it, I'll kick her out in her underwear." I turned off the recorder, my hands trembling. To hear my own son speak like that about me, his mother, it was too much. The room spun as I tried to comprehend the depth of his betrayal. Flying to Hawaii was a decision I didn't make lightly. Oliver was by my side, both of us tense but determined to face whatever awaited us. When we landed and approached the venue, I was taken aback by the sheer opulence of it all. Flowers everywhere, lights strewn like stars across the evening sky, and music floating in the air. As we walked into the gathering, I spotted James and Isabella mingling with guests. They looked like a picture-perfect couple, all smiles and laughter. My heart ached to see my son so lost in this fabricated paradise. Before I could take another step towards them, Isabella spotted us. Her smile vanished, replaced by a scowl as she marched over, her high heels clicking angrily against the stone pathway. "You shouldn't be here," she hissed, stopping just inches from me, her voice loud enough to draw attention. "This is my day, and you're not welcome." I was stunned, but before I could respond, her parents, who had overheard, came over. Her father, a tall, stern-looking man, spoke first. "Isabella, that is no way to speak to your guest, much less to James's mother." His tone was harsh, a reprimand that made her cheeks flush with embarrassment. Her mother, looking equally appalled, turned to me with an apologetic smile. "Eleanor, please come with us. Let's find you a place to sit." They guided us away, leading us to a table at the edge of the setup, clearly an afterthought, with no proper setting. The ceremony started soon after, with speeches that felt hollow given the tension. Then unexpectedly, I was handed the microphone. I stood, my legs shaky but my resolve firm. "I came here today to wish my son and his new wife a happy future." I began, my voice steady despite the trembling inside. But I also believe in honesty and integrity, something that's been sorely missing from the events leading up to this day. Isabella's face went from pink to red, her eyes glaring daggers at me. I was asked for money time, and again in amounts that no reasonable person would find justifiable. When I couldn't meet these demands, I was threatened with separation from my family and future grandchildren. My voice cracked a bit, but I pressed on. Oliver, seeing my distress, stepped closer, placing a supportive hand on my shoulder. I nodded at him, then turned on the audio recording he had made. Isabella's voice filled the air, cold and calculating, discussing how they would milk more money from me. James's voice agreed, saying he was prepared to leave me with nothing for the sake of his bride. The crowd murmured, the air thick with shock and disapproval. I turned off the recorder, the silence heavy. I gave my son an apartment and $25,000, and yet it was never enough. Today I'm making it clear I will not be treated as an ATM or threatened. I am done with James and Isabella. I wish them well, but from this day forward, I am choosing to remove myself from their lives." The reaction was immediate. Isabella screamed, her voice shrill and wild. "You've ruined my wedding. I curse you." After everything that had happened, coming back home was bittersweet. In the quiet, I made a decision that startled even me. I quit my job. I'd spent years healing others as a doctor, but now it was time to heal myself and rebuild the life that the recent storms had scattered. Oliver, bless his heart, had just graduated from art college and was brimming with ideas and ambition. With the $25,000 I had given him, he opened his own tattoo parlor. It wasn't just any shop. It quickly became a place where art and skin met in stunning displays. Oliver poured his soul into his work, and it paid off. He started entering tattoo contests, and soon enough, his name was on every local's lips. Before we knew it, he was opening more locations, creating a network of salons that became a hotspot for tattoo enthusiasts. I'd watch him sketch late into the night, his dedication a stark contrast to the chaos his brother had chosen. "You're doing amazing, Ollie," I'd say, pride swelling in my chest. It was during these calm months that James reappeared. One afternoon, he showed up at the door, his eyes tired, his shoulders slumped, so different from the ambitious, sharp man he once was. "Mom, I need to talk," he said, not waiting for an invitation to sit. His voice was weary, a far cry from the demanding tone I'd grown accustomed to. I sighed, motioning for him to continue. "What is it, James?" "It's Bella. She's driving me insane. Once more and more, nothing's ever enough. I got a second job, but it's still not enough for her." His words were desperate, but they couldn't erase the past so easily. "James, I warned you. I told you living like that with someone like her is unsustainable." He rubbed his face, frustration clear. I know you did, but I thought." His voice trailed off, hopelessness taking the place of explanation. "Thought what?" "That money would just appear because you wanted it to." My tone was harsh, but years of pent-up frustration made it hard to soften it. "Look at your brother. He started with the same amount and made something of himself without stepping on others." James bristled. "Yeah, well, not everyone's like Oliver, are they? I have rights to the inheritance too, remember. And when you're gone, it'll come to me." That was the last straw. "Get out, James," I said, my voice cold and resolute. "And don't come back, not this time. You chose your path." His jaw tightened, and for a moment, I thought he might argue more, but then he turned and walked out the door, slamming it shut behind him. As I stood in the silence that followed, Oliver came downstairs, having heard the last part of our exchange. "Are you okay, Mom?" I nodded, wrapping my arms around him. "I am now, thanks to you. Let's just focus on the good we can do and on the life we can build." He hugged me back, his presence a comforting assurance that not all was lost. In that moment, I knew that despite the heart-attaches, the journey was still worth it. We had each other, and that was enough to keep moving forward. After the storm had passed with James, our home settled into a calm I hadn't felt in years. It was during this quiet period that Oliver brought someone special home. Her name was Sarah, and she was everything Isabella wasn't: kind, humble, and genuinely caring. As the weeks turned into months, their relationship grew stronger, and soon they announced their engagement. The wedding, unlike the extravagant affair that was James's, was a simple, heartfelt ceremony in our backyard. Flowers from the garden, homemade decorations, and a small group of close friends and family made the day perfect. During the reception, I pulled Oliver aside. "You've chosen a wonderful woman," I said, my voice thick with emotion. He gave my hand a squeeze. His response was a knowing glance. "I learned from the best," he said. After then, life happened fast. They used some of their funds to purchase a modest but comfortable home a few miles away after selling the flat I had given Oliver. Sarah gave us some news one bright day while we were enjoying tea in their new living room. She said, "Eleanor, we're expecting twins," with delight gleaming in her eyes. I was so happy that I almost dropped my cup. Twins? My, that's amazing. Oliver smiled, clearly proud. "We wanted to let you know first. Mom, we're very delighted." "Twins," I said again, giving the words time to register. "Grandchildren." I was excited to begin this new chapter. There wasn't much news from James. He had divorced Isabella when I last heard from him. He had to start again in another city because she had taken almost everything in the separation. It was painful to know that he was struggling someplace as a result of his decisions, even though he had inflicted agony. Oliver sat next to me one evening as I was browsing through old photo albums. A photo of James and myself from years ago caught his eye. He said, "Do you ever hear from him?" I gave a headshake. "No, even if it pains me, I have to accept that he has made his own decisions after everything." Oliver wrapped me in his arm. "Mom, he remains my brother. Perhaps he will change his mind."